Good evening, St. Lucia, and welcome to another SLP Town Hall Tuesday. I'm your host, Mondi Lewis, and this evening, my guest, Honorable Ernest Hilaire, Member of Parliament for Castries South. Good evening, Dr. Hilaire, and welcome to SLP Town Hall Tuesday.
Hi, good evening, and certainly it's been a long time since I've been in the town hall, so I'm certainly looking forward to tonight's discussion. It's a
Well,
pleasure
indeed.
to.
Good, because I'm a constituent, and this is the Castries South edition, St. Lucia. So we will
Uh,
be posing questions about the constituency. And unfortunately, our phone lines are down this evening, so you won't be able to call in with your questions as we had planned. But I'm sure that we will have a very lively conversation with Honorable
mhm.
Hilaire. So over to you, Honorable Hilaire, opening statements to your constituents and the people of St. Lucia.
Well, first of all, I must express my thanks to the constituents of Castro South for having elected me to be their parliamentarian for the last 4.5 years. June will be 5 years. Follow a very proud tradition. The first parliamentarian for Castro South was the Honorable George F.L. Charles, the first chief minister of St. Lucia, and he led St. Lucia out of the colonization, situation that we were in. And of course, he was followed by John Odlum, who is probably noted in St. Lucian politics for his connectedness with his constituents, his style, his approach, his humbleness. And he certainly left a mark in the history of St. Lucia, and followed by Robert Louis, who was the predecessor to me. Of course, in between, we had Desmond Brafitt from the United West Party, who served 2 terms. And even Desmond Brafitt in himself was very well known for his connectedness in the constituency and the way in which he served the constituency. And I can tell you, if Desmond Brafitt did not have a John Ogden to contend with, he certainly would have served more than 2 terms, because even now when I go around, people still mention Desmond Brafitt and some of the things he did for the constituency. And I think we need to certainly appreciate the contribution made by all the former parliamentarians. But it has really been an honor for me to serve Castries South. I was born in Castries South, Lower Mon Road, so the bridge, Old Cemetery, Hospital Road was my stomping ground. My mother is from Bassa Joseph, which is also part of the constituency. So the constituency, in many ways, defined me, made me what I am. And only recently, Sir Michael Chastney made a comment in relation to something he came I had said in the House. And he said, somebody like me who's educated, who's blah, 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 you can take the boy out of the community, but you cannot take the community out of the boy. And I must tell you, I was so happy he had made a statement like that about me, because I really believe that in many ways, the constituency is part of me. I really feel at home and comfortable when I'm in the constituency, and especially in the part of the constituency where I spend my childhood days, and it certainly brings back very fond memories to me. And to get the opportunity now to be the parliamentary representative for Castries South is a real honor. And so many times I sit and I reflect on all the things I wanted to see done when I was a young boy growing up by the bridge. Now I have an opportunity, and very soon to be in government, to implement some of those things. And I must say to you that it is an exciting time ahead for us in Castries South. Um, the last 4.5 years you've been in government, there's so much that you would have wanted to do, as I just said, and just could not do. And that is depressing. That is sometimes very painful, that people come to you for assistance and you cannot deliver the way you want to deliver. But it has also given you an opportunity to learn the constituency in a manner which I'm not sure I would have learned it if I were in government from the start. I became a candidate in March 2016. The election was in June 2016. So I really had about 3 months or so to hit the ground and get to know all the nook and crannies all the nook and cranny of the constituency. And the last 1.5 years, I've got the chance to go throughout the constituency. I've been to just about every home in Castries South. I cannot tell you I've met every single person, but at times you go to homes and individuals are not present. But I've been to every area of Castries South. I've got educated in the realities of Castle South. And that has prepared me in a way that one cannot imagine for when we go into government. I think I can better speak about Castle South. I can better represent Castle South. And I'm certainly looking forward to serving the constituents of Castle South in a manner that they've never seen before. I believe George Charles was very distinguished in his service. I believe John Oglam was. I believe Desmond Bradford was. I believe Robert Lewis was. And I intend to leave my mark in Castle South and to certainly transform the constituency of Castle South.
Thank you for that statement, Dr. Hilaire. You alluded to the fact that this term, especially being in opposition, has been difficult. So could you take us through the last 4.5 years as the MP for Castries South, the highs, the lows, just how you were able to literally still stand here with us today and be that MP and represent the people very well?
Well, I mean, put it that way, there are so many moments that I remember that were inspiring in some ways. You meet individuals in the constituency and they tell you about their dreams. They want their children to go to university. They tell you that they want a good job for their children. Even individuals who tell you they want to go on to school. They want certain, opportunities in life. And I sit down and I reflect on my own upbringing. I mean, I used to sit by the bridge and I used to dream of becoming an ambassador, going to United Nations, go and solve problems in Africa. I used to dream of being an ambassador. I never thought that I would ever have reached the stage of actually becoming an ambassador. I never did because you sit by the bridge, fellas hanging out there nighttime, doing a lot of things that the young boys do, in an area like this at that time of the night and chilling out, whatnot, and dreaming. So when young people now come to me and tell me about their dreams, it reminds me of my own situation that I was in when I was growing up, and I feel inspired because it tells me I have a purpose in serving the constituency. That there I have young people coming to me telling me they want to be a musician, who wants to be a lawyer, who wants to be this, who wants to be that, an accountant. In fact, as we speaking, I remember I have to help a young man get some books for his first year ACCA, and I have to remember to make sure I collect them for him because that inspires you. And yes, there are a lot of up and down moments, but sometimes when you get to know people who have those dreams and aspirations, they want you to help them. That gives you the purpose to serve. You wake up in the morning and you want to get going because you know there are people whose lives you can transform. So in many ways, I have been very excited by, the constituency and the people that I have met. I see the challenges. There are numerous challenges, and I guess we'll get a chance to speak about the challenges in the constituency. So the last 4 years has been a learning experience for me. It was also a chance for me, I will tell you, to get back at grounding with my brothers almost. I think Walter Rodney wrote this book, The Groundings with My Brothers, because I had left the constituency, went to university, studied, went to Cambridge, came back, went to Cambridge to teach, came back with Dr. Anthony, worked for a few years, in the labor administration, then went to do my PhD, worked in Antigua, in New York, worked in, cricket internationally. And kind of for a period of time, I had lost my groundings in a sense because I had been out since 2002. So, the last 4 years has been my groundings. It has taken me down to reality, away from having dinner in Kensington Palace and, with the Queen and going to France to meet the Prime Minister, the President of France, and being an ambassador, being a CEO of Cricket World Cup, traveling all over the world. I had reached that level, and that took me right back down to the ordinary life and how ordinary people live, the sufferings of ordinary people. And it reminded me of my own upbringing, my own challenges. So I was very grateful for the last few years, to get that grounding once again and to bring me back down to earth, to restore the kind of humility and modesty that I need to serve properly. And I think to some extent you can lose that when you start enjoying a more comfortable life. And that brought me back down to earth. And I'm really appreciative of that. But it's also a little disturbing and disappointing when you just don't have the tools available. Parents need school books. I mean, recently, a couple of years ago, a parent came to see me because they don't have money to pay their alpha fees for the child. And then you wish, oh gosh, if only I could make a call to the ministry or to SSDF and get assistance so that child can go back to school, because the child had to drop out because they didn't have money to pay the fees. And I know certainly in the case of Robert Lewis when he was in government, so many persons have said to me, it's Robert Lewis that helped them, to get assistance to do their stuff, whatnot. I cannot even do it. So whatever little resources I can raise, I can probably make a little contribution to assist them. So the last 4 years has been very disappointing in that regard. The elderly, their homes are leaking. They need some galvanized. They need some plywood, and you wish you could approach a government ministry and say, well, look, there's a 65-year-old lady with two grandchildren in the house. They have put a bucket in the middle of the floor. The flooring is sinking because, the plywood has gone bad. And you wish you can assist those persons. I have not been able to do that to the extent that I want to. It has to depend on what resources I can raise to do so. Again, it has been disappointing in that regard. A Labour Party government is always more sensitive and sympathetic to the sufferings of disadvantaged and marginalized people, and therefore they always have a greater, um, you know, disposition to assist. This government has, in many ways, been very insensitive to some of those issues. And again, you're an opposition parliamentarian, so there's nothing you're going to get. There have not been one CDP project, not one, that I have recommended or have been asked to recommend for the constituency. I know there've probably been about 4 or 5 that I'm told have been CDP projects, small projects. Usually that guy gives, a contract to somebody to do a wall or something like this. But they've been very little done in the constituency, and that has been disappointing.
Okay, Dr. Hiller. So this was your first term. It sounds like a lot of challenges, but I'm sure that there were some highs. How were you able to navigate some of the challenges? I know you said pull some resources here, but even in terms of community activities and even your own book drives, your own scholarship programs, feeding of the elderly, the hampers. How were you able to do a lot of these things? And we've seen your social media very active in you being on the ground and with the people. How were you able to do that?
Well, I mean, part of it is having good friends, family that support you. That sometimes you develop the ability to network and to mobilize resources. If I need to raise $1,000, I'll call Monty Lewis. Can you give me $100? I will call, somebody else. They can give me $100. Can you give me $100? And by the time you know it, I probably raise $1,000. And I think in life I've always learned that if you share, if you give, it will always come back to you. And if you live your life well enough, people will always want to be generous and supportive of you because you used to help. And even in my political life, I mean, I always contributed. I grew up in the youth movement, the student movement. I always supported youth groups, supported initiatives, and always wanted to do it. And to some extent, you get a lot of goodwill now. But I can tell you something. I since becoming parliamentary rep, I have put a lot of emphasis on building social cohesion and bringing the communities together. So when you look at the activities that I have had organized in the constituency, a lot of them have been in at doing that. And some of those activities that can get support. So, for example, in Fua Show, together with Marcus, with his dance troupe, I started a dance festival around March, April each year. So, we block off the road by Strasbourg Gate, and the dance group in the community would put on a production. I mean, COVID has really hurt everything, and that has stopped. But it was a source of pride for the community, and it brought neighboring communities together to come into Fua Show. Of course, there are challenges, and they always have issues, and other communities do not always come into Fua Show. But through the activity, we try to bring people to come in. Um, in Cicero, for example, I started off a pageant. In June of each year, we had 3 editions of it, and again, COVID stopped it last year. I introduced a carnival parade in Cicero, and of course, we had it for 2 years. I started a Journée Creole in Cicero. I also started a fruitcake and sorrel competition in December, so the different communities can each compete to see who can make the best fruitcake and make the best sorrel drink. And all of that was done in Cicero. In Bassa Joseph, I organized a solo night, Christmas Eve, and we did it for two Christmas Eves until last year. Again, with COVID, we couldn't do it. In Marigo, for 1 year, I did an Emancipation Day cultural event on the beach. Young people, poetry and spoken word, whatnot. Again, COVID last year, we couldn't do it. Robert Lewis had the scholarship program for the top 10 performers in the constituency. I continued that. There was already cricket at Easter from Robert Lewis. I continued that. Independence Operama. I continued that. Um, and in many ways, for me, the importance of those activities is to bring communities together, bring people together, build social cohesion, build social integration. And that's really important for me. And I was able to do it because I could have called on individuals, I could have asked for support, I could mobilize support, and to cause it to happen. And for me, it's a priority. Whatever little I have no difficulty in sharing it to build the communities because that's the purpose to which I put myself is to serve the communities, and what I have is for the communities as much as possible. So I've really been proud to be able to do those activities in the constituency. You spoke about Christmas, the activities for the elderly. Every Christmas we do four children's parties. Robert started it, and I think John Holland started it. Robert continued, and I also continued. The dinner for the elderly, the hampers for the sick and shut-in every December. And let me tell you something, nothing gives you more joy but than to actually organize an activity like that. The dinner, for the lunch for the elderly, the hampers for the sick and shut in, the children's parties, and to actually see people enjoying the activity and bringing the merriment and satisfaction to them. That gives you a sense of satisfaction. And for me, the challenge is that nothing compares to the satisfaction I get from organizing those activities.
Thank you for that, Dr. Hiller. It seems that you've done very well in opposition. But St. Lucia, this is the first segment of SLP Town Hall Tuesday, and we're due for a break, but we'll be right back. Welcome back to SLP Town Hall Tuesday. I'm your host, Mondi Lewis, and my guest for this evening is Honorable Ernest Hiller, who is the MP for Castries South. So we have been speaking about the issues in Castries South, Mr. Hiller's plans, well, not even his plans, sorry, the things that he's done within the constituency, and he has a very extensive list. But now we're going to go into some of the issues which, I guess, plagues the constituency, and Dr. Hiller will take us through some of the challenges that individuals have found themselves in.
Trust me, Castries South is probably one of those constituencies that you describe as being, urban constituencies. So you probably have Castries Central, Castries East, and Castries South. That best defines that, and to some extent, Castries North. But Castries North is probably a little more diverse than Castries East, Central, and South. And because we urban on the margins of the city center, you find we have a very high density. So Castries South, which is not very large, it can take me less than half an hour from one end to the next end. I can go through the entire constituency in less than half an hour. But we have over 9,000 registered voters. When you consider F2, which is Cicero and Woodlands, alone has about 4,300 registered voters, 4,300. Just in that small space, you can move your F2, you can drive F2 one end to the next in less than 10 minutes, but that's about 4,500 voters. You find there's a high density of people living. It's also a transient constituency. It's amazing. I stand in the balcony of my constituency office. Every single day, I will see somebody new get off the bus or walk around the road to stop to get a bus because there's so many individuals who come in from other communities, come in, they book somewhere in Castries or in one of the hotels, they rent a house, they live there for a year and a half, and then they move on to another community where they've got another house or some other thing. So there's also a lot of transient residents in the constituency. When you look at places like Monkey Town, for example, there are individuals I never see in Cicero from Monkey Town because they just walk down the road onto Millennium Highway and take the bus there, get off the bus and just walk up to their homes and never really mix with the rest of Cicero. It's also a constituency which is kind of unique because you have Fuasho. Um, there's no central point, for example. People from F1, which is Fuasho, Monato, Banan, Turner Road, um, Lower, Lower Mon Road, whatnot, they don't go into Cicero as the center of the constituency. They more go to Castries Central for whatever they need. Cicero doesn't really go to Fuasho. They don't really go to Bassett Joseph or Marigo. Marigo and Bassett Joseph are almost next to each other. But sometimes we have to have two meetings because Marigo residents don't normally come into Bassett Joseph. Bassett Joseph don't normally go into Marigo. Marigo residents will go straight to Castries Central. So there's not a lot of mixing of the communities in Castries South. But there's serious issues that need to be focused on. Unemployment is major. And again, like I said, there are a lot of people from other constituencies, from other communities, who come to live in the constituency looking for employment in the hotels or in the city center, whatnot. So you have a lot of persons who are, suffering the situation of unemployment, and that's major. Unemployment is major, and especially among the young people. We really need to address our minds to that, and when you speak of some of the plans, we can discuss that. There is the issue of infrastructure. Again, because of the high density, you have issues with um, solid waste disposal. You have issues in terms of persons don't have toilets in their homes that they live in, and the need for still have a need for public facilities. You have issues with footpaths and pathways, in steps to get to people's homes. A lot of the houses are on hillsides. You have issues with drainage. People don't have guttering water. You're running down the hills. You've had situations with land movement because of that. So we have some serious infrastructural issues with the roads, for example. You look at the Bassett Joseph Road, the state of the road, Marigo Road as well. Now the work has started on the Marigo Road. Although it was stopped, I was told that a particular government minister stopped the works on the Marigo Road. He believed that it should go into another constituency to work on North Castries South. I did intervene and I did speak to the ministers responsible, and I noticed yesterday and today the work has continued. So you do have issues of infrastructure. You have issues of recreational facilities for our youth. When you just consider, for example, Cicero, which probably have almost 4,000 people living, there's not a proper size playing field. Can you just imagine a community of almost 4,000? I'm talking about from the top of the mall all the way down to Mount Kitong. Close to 4,000 people living easily. There's no standard size playing field in the community. There's one court, an old dilapidated court down in the bottom of Cicero. And how can that be? How can a community as big as that do not even have a proper size playing field? You look at Fuasho. Fuasho, there's no sporting facilities there for our young people. The Labour Party, when last in government, had acquired a piece of land to be able to develop a court there, but that has never been done in the last 4.5 years. It is something which has to be done by the next Labour Party administration. Banan has a small playing field. I mean, a very small playing field. Monlatok has nothing. You go into Woodlands. Woodlands on the Castries South side has no playing facilities. The young people used to use down by the George Charles Secondary School. They had cleared out an area where they used to use primarily to play softball, cricket, and Woodlands has a very good team. It was taken away to put trailer trucks, taken away from the young people to put trailer trucks. Can you imagine that? So they have no place to play now in Woodlands. The football team has virtually gone down the drain. You go over to Bassett Joseph. Bassett Joseph doesn't have any playing facilities for no courts, nothing for the young people. I mean, the young people virtually play football in a small area in front of a incomplete community center. You go to Marigo, there is a playing field in Marigo, and there's a court, but the court is within the school compound. So the constituency as a whole have serious issues with recreational facilities for our young people. I mentioned the community center. In Cicero, the community center has been closed for 3 years. And I remember I told you that's a community that has about almost 5,000 people, and there's no community center. It has been closed down for the last 3 years. Closed down. In Bassett Joseph, Robert Lewis started a community center. It was halfway completed. Nothing has been done on it for the last 4.5 years except to give somebody out of the blue from outside Bassett Joseph, outside the constituency, a contract to do some plastering. And that's it. In Marigot, there is a building that was started under the Labour Party for early childhood center downstairs and a community space upstairs. The community space has not even been completed. Just think about that. They've not even completed the space for the community center upstairs, the early childhood center. The constituency has been totally neglected when it comes to recreational and community facilities for um, the constituents. There's serious issues with housing, real serious issues, again related to the high density that's involved. Look at Fuasho, look at Old Cemetery, Monkey Tongue. Again, there has to be an effort to create the housing and to even offer more opportunities for people in Cashew South. And I think that's critical. And add to that land ownership issues, that one for me is a major, major issue. And I'll tell you why individuals like myself were able to go to university because that our parents, well, in that case, my mother, was able to have access and to own a piece of land, and my brother to own a piece of land and being able to use it to mortgage Uskenas University. That's the power of St. Lucians owning a piece of the country. That's empowering them. And you have, for example, in Monlatok, in Woodlands, individuals that have been living on lands for 30, 40 years and still cannot own that piece of land and still having to pay rent for land. And I think it's really unfair. I have a situation where somebody in Woodlands explained to me that they started paying the land almost 30 years ago. The interest on the land now is more than the cost of the land in the first place. They paid more than the original cost of the land. So we need to regularize a lot of those situations. Like I said, Monlato, Banan, Woodlands, when it comes to land ownership. And even the old cemetery, we need to deal with the issues of land ownership. Then we have, of course, some of the crime in the constituency. Anywhere that is so dense, so many persons live in close proximity to each other, high unemployment, you will have other social deviance issues, you'll have crime issues. And I must say it's something which I've taken a personal interest in. Very quietly, I try to ensure that when there seem to be any simmering problems, I can just, spread words of advice and discouragement among the persons involved to make sure it never, escalates. Because I know growing up in the community that I grew up in, the consequences of that. So I try to speak to the young men, I speak to another individuals who are involved, try to make them understand the need for tolerance and understanding each other and to de-escalate when situations emerge. But it is something that we need to focus on. And I think I can still probably mention a couple, but that gives you a sense of some of the challenges that we face.
Indeed, Dr. Hilaire. And I mean, it seems very extensive. And I must tell St. Lucia that I am from Castries South, proudly so, from Cicero to be exact.
I am. I am.
Yes, and we're very proud of that. And my family's from Castries South, and very familiar with a lot of these issues that Dr. Hilaire is speaking about. So for me, it is a very important conversation to have. And just for everyone to know, this is not our typical Town Hall Tuesday. We're really focusing on constituencies, especially the ones that the Labour Party has MPs for. So we're doing Castries South edition today with Honorable Dr. Hilaire. So Dr. Hilaire, you spoke about the issues, and I can only imagine that now with COVID-19, some of these issues have been exacerbated. How has COVID-19 affected the constituency of Castries South?
Um, it's been really difficult, really, really difficult. And I think we need to be honest with solutions in many ways. The COVID is not just about, it's not just a clinical issue. It's not just a question of, a virus, how they affecting individuals. Yes, there is that. And that's the major focus. But there's also the psychological consequences of having COVID. Psychological. That's why we do not seem to focus on that. Um, I guess it's not just COVID, but in any time of distress, individuals will be traumatized psychologically by what's happening to them. And I so often I have to sit with constituents and listen to them about the pain and suffering that they're going through right now. Some of them have not worked since March last year. Some of them have, lost their income. And they how they're trying to figure out where the next meal is coming from. And they have children. They have rent to pay. They have bills to pay. They have food to buy for their children, and they do not know how they are going to make it happen. But they have to find a way to make it happen. Can you imagine the landlord telling you, sorry, you have to leave because you've not paid your rent for how many months? And you have two children, you're a single mother. What do you do? What do you do? Are you going to just take the two children, take your stuff and just just go out in the road? What you going to do? And that's reality. And sometimes when you say that, I mean, the government almost wants to dismiss it. I mean, I know a young man who told me he had not eaten for about 3 days, and he eventually ended up in the hospital. As you can imagine, if you have not eaten you properly, the effect it can have on you. And he needs a little strength, a little support. What do you do? Where do you send him? How do you resolve that issue for him? And so often we chastise young men for not accepting their responsibilities as fathers. But there are those who really try their very best. And many of them have spoken to me about their challenges. As a boss man, I have my child, and what am I going to do with my child? I had nothing, I had nothing. You can't find a job for me, you can't give me a little something. And they are trying, and they don't want to give up on their child or on their girlfriend, but that's how difficult it is for them. And that's real, that's out there, it's happening. We have elderly, oh my gosh, some of the elderly, and I've said so in Parliament before, they are elderly who can't buy the medicines, they can't pay their bills, they can't buy meals. And this is what COVID is doing. I mean, I'm not even talking about the challenge of the virus affecting you and you being medically affected and you probably having to go to hospital and fight for your life. There is that. But there's also probably a more prevailing concern about the quality of life, the loss of civilized standards of living that individuals have to go through. In a constituency like mine, that already had high levels of unemployment, already had serious social challenges. You can imagine what COVID is doing to the constituency. And I think we need to be, sympathetic to those issues as well. And I think we speak a lot about COVID, wear your mask, wash your hands, keep your distance, whatnot. They must observe that. That's critical. But we also have to deal with the other side of it and how individuals are dealing with the challenges of COVID and surviving. Now, why a constituency like ours, a constituency like mine, I said ours meaning you, is so more affected, is because there are so many individuals in there that make a living through hustling. They don't have full-time employment, they're not in gainful employment, but they hustle a living. They do a job today, they do a job tomorrow, they get a job for 3 days. You're going to have some fellas cut some grass, they go and break a job there, they do something. So many of the young people, that's how they survive. Now, when there's an economic downturn and nothing happening, nothing running, as they would say, how do they survive? Because there is no hustling to take place. That's the reality. So, what do you tell them? How do you say to them? I mean, I've had young men who call me and tell me, boss, it's a crime I got to commit. I have nothing, nothing, nothing. And I tell them, nah, don't go wrong, do that, do that, do that. Check me and see what you can do for him or whatnot. Or you just tell them, hold strong. Sometimes you just have to tell them, hold strong. And just tell them, once it go get better, it will get better, it will get better. And you have to do that because you understand what they're going through and the struggles and the strife that they're facing. I mean, sometimes you ask yourself, why couldn't the government just spend some of the monies that they've been spending on the roads and other projects on just some of the usual step programs? We used to have step programs. A lot of individuals who are not necessarily in full-time employment or even gainfully employed saw it as a little kakadon that they can get to take care of their family. They look forward to those monies at Christmas, at Easter, in the summer before school reopened. We've not had one such program for during COVID, not one such program during COVID, at a time when we most need for government to intervene and at least create some short-term employment for our people. That has not happened. Just think about that. Think about that. At a time when we most need of short-term employment programs, we've not had one. We've not had one. And the community is overrun with bush and drains, clogged with grass, and they can't even give the fellas a little contract to clean, and to debush. When they need the monies, now more than ever. That's another, when I say to the government how insensitive they are, how they don't understand the plight of our people. And I ask the parliamentarians on the other side, don't you all even connect with your constituents? They see they have a different model in their head because they believe if you are struggling, you're desperate, and they have a few dollars, they can flash it at the right time, and all will be well. That's the model in their head. That's how they see development. That's how they see electoral victory. But the humanistic element of it, of just being caring and showing empathy for people who are going through hard times, is just not there. And I can tell you, it's very easy to speak about COVID and the challenges and the testing and the contact tracing and the mask, whatnot. That's one side of COVID. But there's a different side of COVID I have to face every single day. And that's individuals coming up to me and just telling me about their plight and about their suffering and seeking some solace and some assistance to face those challenges.
Thank you for that, Dr. Hiller. Trust me, I know from a lot of the messages that we also get on our social media pages, some of the struggles of individuals. And St. Lucia, remember, almost $500 million in COVID-19 relief. And have you felt it? Please stay tuned. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back to SLP Town Hall Tuesday. I'm your host, Mondi Lewis, and my guest, Honorable Dr. Ernest Hilaire, the MP for Castries South. So Dr. Hilaire really took us through some, really heartbreaking issues facing constituents in Castries South, and more acutely so during the COVID-19 pandemic. But Dr. Hilaire, I know with you there is always a plan. How are we going to get out of this? The SLP wins the next election in the coming months. How many months we have again? June 6th is 5 years. The SLP wins the next general elections. What are the plans for constituents? How do we get people to work? What do we do?
Well, yeah, when it comes to some of those broader initiatives, the political leader, Philip J. Pierre, will make announcements at the right time. But I can tell you, immediately we need to reset the clock. We really need to reset it. I've also been very disturbed, Mondi, by the level of tribalization we've had in our communities. We've always had political sides in St. Lucia. I'm sure you would recall, maybe you're a little too young for that. But we used to have elections, and people generally wait for the next 5 years for the next elections to then decide who they voted for campaigns, so that was not. Modern society has changed with 24-hour television, with now social media. It's everyday campaigning, really. And we're not going to go back to the good old days. Politics will dominate our lives every single day. You just had to watch CNN for the last 4 years. Every day was something about Trump, for example. And it's going to be like that for the foreseeable future. But what it has also brought is the expression of division, the expression of distrust, the maliciousness that can play politics has now become an everyday feature. And even people like myself, I've had to suffer from it. I mean, from the day I entered, there were people who thought that I would be a threat and I would be, somebody that they need to keep in check. And they came after me. And I came into politics wanting to serve. And I never thought for a moment that, our politics would have become so personal and so malicious like it has become. But, I always tell people I have a very thick skin and I will fight my battle when I know vindication will come one day. But at the community level, you've seen in the last 4 years a level of tribalism that I think is so unhealthy for our country. And a Labour Party government must attune itself to how we can start, you know, building social cohesion again as much as possible. That there is just too much political tension and and fighting and struggling taking place between the two sides. We have to try and create in there an understanding that yes, we need to fight our political battles, but there's still a St. Lucia. I mean, I take immense pride in knowing that I represent my country. Whether as a student, wherever I work in the world, I am proud to defend and represent my country. I want to be first in class, so I can boast that I am father from St. Lucia, and whatnot, and that's how we should be. And so starting off with a Labour Party government, we have to start resetting some of the buttons, and one of which has to be reduce the tribalism and making our people believe in the possibilities of working together and achieving more if we can work together. And then we will fight again politically when the time reaches, or even when we do fight, we do it in a particular manner where we are not retarding the progress of the country. I love a debate, I love an argument and have no problems. In fact, I don't like when people agree with things I say. I like to be contested. I like all ideas to be put on the table and let's argue and debate it. And at the end of the day, let's agree how we move forward. And that's how you should do it in a mature way. So dealing with the challenges and planning for the way forward, at the forefront of our minds must always be how we can harness the potential of all our peoples, not just some. The idea of public servants being fired because they stood up on points of principle or because they believe they support a particular party should be a thing of the past. Of course, if somebody is not performing, if somebody is undermining the work of government, they must be held accountable. There must be consequence management for that kind of behavior. But we have to start off any new initiative in government with the belief that it has to include the talents of our solutions, and let us try to harness that talent as much as possible. Of course, we'll be faced with COVID. It's a reality. It has been disastrous for St. Lucia, for communities, for the region, for the world. So you have to take stock of where you are in terms of the consequences of COVID, and that enables you to plan moving forward. But that does not take away from you accepting that life will return to a state of normalcy. Of course, there'll be amendments to how we did things before and different ways, better ways in some instances of doing things. But life largely will return to a state of normalcy, maybe even for the better. We've had plagues and pandemics before. We had the Spanish flu, of the 1920s, and we recovered. We had the Great Depression in the 1930s. We had the World War II in the 1940s. So the world has gone through cycles, of upheavals before, and life has still moved forward. So therefore, we have to anticipate that life will move forward. But it also gives us an opportunity for us to redesign certain aspects of our functioning in the country. For example, the whole issue of tourism. And the tourism that we know in St. Lucia for the last few years has to be redesigned. There's no two ways about it. And we have to start tuning our minds to how we can redesign the tourism that we have in a way that can make it acceptable to the people and bring better benefit to them. So there's a lot that Labour Party will have to focus on. Labour Party will have to, and like I said, at the right time, the pronouncements will be made. So it's a little premature for me to go into any details. But I can tell you at the level of the constituency, there is a lot that I want to do. I mean, I have a program of activities, a program of action that I am looking forward to launch And once we are in government and Philip JP as Prime Minister says to me, this is what you have available to you, I want to be able to start action immediately. I mean, by my nature, I'm not a person that sits down and just let time pass. I have to always be on the go. So I'm waiting, for me to get started to do a few things. Um, I don't know if you want me to go into some of the plans for the constituency
But
already.
before you go into your plans, I have some video questions for you from your constituents. So, can I have the first video question for Dr. Hille?
With the Denry segment and the comedy family would like to know what you would do for entertainment, whether it be music-wise, whether it be comedy, like I said, or whether it be dance.
Yeah, he's a talented young man. So he's a person involved in the creative arts, and he certainly has dreams of developing his talents and earning a living from his talents. I think Philip JP has mentioned the youth economy, and the youth economy is about individuals like him, that young man. A young man with a dream, a young man who sees himself as somebody who can produce music and he can go very far in life. And the youth economy will be implemented for persons like him. And I am hoping that in Castres South, we are able to create the facilities that can house people like him. So, for example, you know where Lakudoy is, the old capital management building, when you're going down the Cicero Hill, so on your right hand side, just before you meet the Baptist Church. Capital management used to be there selling lumber and other materials. This building has been abandoned for many, many years.
People actually
Somebody
play
has bought
football
it.
there.
Yeah, the young men actually play football in the yard. Just imagine if we refurbish that building. That is a massive building. And we create a facility in their community center where you have music labs, where you have a couple of small economic projects, whether it is making chocolate, making some, confectionery or something. We can house a learning resource center in there. And a young man like him can go in there where there is a music lab and learn song engineering, learn and record his own music and play around with music day in day out until he gets the right rhythm and he gets the right song and put it out there. We have to do that. I've said to some of the young men, a Labour Party in government will acquire this building. There's no reason why this building should just be there for years, just running down. We should acquire the building, and we should, once we have the resources, as as soon as possible to refurbish it and to make it available to the young men of the community. You see the young boys that play down in the yard, right opposite that building on the other side of the road. There's some flat, empty land there, bush. We can always create a playing area there for them, so they would be entirely displaced. So a young man like him will see opportunities. In Fuasho, for example, and there's a gentleman called Botti. Botti used to be involved in teaching music in the after-school program. Robert Lewis will tell you that they have all the equipment downstairs there. They had all computers, about almost 20 computers, locked up in a room since 2016. Since 2016, never been used. Now, Botti is still available and other individuals. I mean, when you talk about musical talent, Cassius South has so much of that. You know, to teach young people like him music, Marigold. So it's an amazing amount of young men that are interested in music and producing music in St. Lucia. That if we really get it right, there's so much that can happen. Even I'll tell you something. Even this government recognize that, and they spoke a bit about building music labs around and recording studios around St. Lucia. I don't know that any has been completed. But again, this government has a way of boasting that they are workers and they only seem to be working for themselves because I still have not heard of any that have been open that has been open. But I can tell him, I can tell Junior, who is a young man in the video, that the Labour Party has a plan for individuals like himself.
I'm very excited about that, Dr. Hille, so I could also do my art studio in that building. So very good.
Yeah, yeah. But you must have some wine. I hear there are some artists that you drink when they're drinking wine. I'm not sure if you're one of them. I know a friend of mine, Thaddeus, is one of them.
Yes, yes. Well, yes. Taddy is invited to my art studio every time.
Yeah, yeah.
We have another question for you. So let's take that question.
I would like to know what you would do for the road and the elderly in Marigot.
So two questions: the
Yeah.
road
Yeah,
and the
the road.
elderly.
But I spoke about the road earlier, that the Marigold Road, which has been a sore point for the residents for the longest while. Let me tell you something. If you just look in the background to those two videos, you'll see the Marigold Bay, one of the most iconic spots in St. Lucia. And I believe after the Peters is the most recognizable spot in St. Lucia. And Marigold itself has so much potential in terms of tourism development and even the community being able to earn livelihoods out of tourism using the natural resources, which is the bay and the setting and the environment. And there's so much that can be done. Like, so it's happening because the road had deteriorated so badly. And you had so many tourists coming there to take photos of the bay, and the road was in such a state. After years of calling on the government, finally the road started a couple of weeks ago, only to hear that the road was stopped. I made my inquiries and I was told a directive was given to the contractor to stop the works and to move to a neighboring constituency to work instead. Of course, I had to intervene. I had to raise it with the minister responsible and to just point out you just cannot do that. You're not hurting me necessarily. When you do not fix the road, it's not necessarily you're hurting the constituents. And it's just not fair to them. It's just not fair. And I noticed that the road has started back. And at least they could have had a meeting in the community. Say to the community, this is what the plan is. This is what we'll be doing. This is how long it will take. And there's no idea exactly what will be done. I mean, I've noticed some of the work. I wish it would be, a lot more than what they're doing. But that's an issue for another time, and we'll resolve it. So I can say to her that yes, the road is being addressed by this government, and if this government does not complete it, the Labour Party will complete it. As far as the elderly is concerned, again, under Dr. Kenny Anthony, the elderly home care program started. It is one of the signature programs of the Labour Party. In many ways, it represented, what we are about, the care for people who are not able to assist themselves, the disadvantaged, the marginalized. The elderly, as we know, so many of them cannot do much for themselves. They need to depend on others, on family. And most times, family have moved on and they don't come back and give them the kind of care and attention they need. And who has to do it? Do we abandon them and let them starve and be sick in homes and nobody cares? And we started a home care program where you can actually go to those individuals' homes and to be able to take care for them. But I also believe we can do more than that. I believe some of the facilities can be used to actually bring some of them out of their homes because they're just confined to their homes. If we can take some of them and bring them, for example, I made mention in Marigo of the early childhood center at the bottom, but at the top, you have the community space. Now, it would be difficult to bring the elderly upstairs there. But if we can get a facility where we can bring some of the elderly people into a open space, they can play bingo, they can play games, they can talk to their friends and neighbors and friends they've not seen in the community for a while because they don't go out as often as before. If we can bring them out, you can even bring the children to come and meet them. They can tell the children stories. I remember doing an oral history project for the Folk Research Center when I was a university student, where we went all over the island, interviewing some of the elderly. And it was so rewarding to listen to midwives and musicians and herbalists tell you about growing up in the communities and what they did. And the children can learn so much from the elderly, but if we have them in a common space and maybe 2 days a week, 3 days a week, it will be good for their own health and for the community's growth. So I believe there's a lot that we can do for the elderly. We need to come up with another program. Home care probably should be for some of the elderly, but we can add another program that will take the elderly out of the home into the community in open spaces. They can probably exercise, stretch their bones and keep a little healthy, and also play cards, play dominoes, tell jokes, bring in the children to interact with them, tell children jokes, and we can do that 2 or 3 times a day. And it's not going to take any huge sums of money to do that. It will take some organization. But I think we can do that. So I look forward to the Labour Party in government introducing a program like this.
I'm very excited about this program, but one thing I wanted to say about the home health program, I've known women who were trained who've actually been able to export their service because, again, this wasn't just some wishy-washy training. I know women who have now gone and, geriatric care in the United States is a big deal. And I've known women who have been able to find employment in geriatric care overseas. So again, I think these are things, people thought it was, we're just giving government money, but you empowered somebody with a skill. And I think that was very good.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it also shows the importance of training. Companies and government do not like to spend money on training individuals, upgrading the skills of your employees. And I'm looking forward to a lot of resources being spent on social welfare training. When I say social welfare training, let me explain it differently. We need more social workers, individuals that can go into communities, that can deal with the elderly, that can deal with the young people. We need individuals who can go to communities and de-escalate tension and issues. We need individuals who can go to communities and speak to abused children and individuals. Who's caring for them? Yes, we now have psychologists and psychiatrists and counselors that, persons who can afford can go to. So if you're not feeling it, and you're feeling depressed or you're feeling challenged, you can go to your shrink, but you can pay that money. But then just think about the thousands of people in this country that are going through mental health issues. And again, we believe mental health means you're crazy, you're mad. It does not mean that. People in this modern industrialized world, industrialized and technological world, are feeling pressures like never before. One of the days when you can just chill out and you're easy and you're cool and the stress level is very low. That's not the times we live in now. So people are under stress, people are under pressure. How do they cope? What are the coping skills that they are getting? And then when they explode, everybody says, oh, they're the worst person there is. But the signs were always there. People go into alcohol, and now we hear they might even ban alcohol permanently. And you say, oh, there is alcohol, and the alcohol making them even glad. They go learn, they go stop drinking. So I don't even know why people are resorting to alcohol. There are individuals who do all kinds of things. There are individuals who are physically violent, and these are their own response mechanism. I mean, I'm not a psychiatrist, and I do my own reading on some of those issues because I want to better understand people. But we have to be able to understand as a society, how do we deal with mental health issues? How do we deal with people who are facing different challenges and they don't have the coping skills? And the level of suicide. Would you believe this government, when in opposition, blame Advina Reynolds and Kenny Anthony for every suicide in this country in a very opportunistic, brazen kind of way, insensitive, that once somebody dies, what is Advina doing about it? What's Kenny doing about it? Maybe, to some extent, one can argue at the end of the day, the buck stops somewhere. But then these are deeper issues that one has to reflect on as a society. And I would want to say, as a Labour Party, being sensitive to some of those issues, really sensitive to it, and to recognize that our community needs the resources. We need to train people in elderly care. We need to train people in conflict resolution. We need to train people in how to develop coping skills in other individuals. And they can actually be active in the communities and providing that support and to make our country a healthier country, psychologically, emotionally.
Thank you for that, Dr. Hilaire. So any of your plans, I know you said you would leave the national plans for the political leader, but any of your plans for the constituency of Castries South, now that you've answered our two questions?
Yeah. I mean, one of the first things I want, and I can tell you up front, is dealing with the land ownership issues. And like I said, from my own personal circumstances in life, I know the importance of solutions. Owning a piece of this rock that you can say is yours, the importance of it to your children's schooling, you can mortgage a piece of land. There are just too many families that have been living on lands for too long and they cannot own it. And have to make the arrangement for them to be able to own land. So land ownership is a big issue for me. So the people of Woodlands or Manad or Monlato, there is something that has to be done to help you to acquire the lands that you've been living on for so long, and nobody has really addressed it sufficiently in the past. The recreational facilities is a big one for me for the young people. Fuashu needs a cut. Of course, we have to talk about the long term of Fuashu and what has to be done with Fuashu. But for sure, immediately, I'm tired of young people playing football and cricket on the road and in the yard of the community center. I grew up playing cricket on the road, and young people are still playing cricket on the road. We need to do something about that. Cicero needs a proper playing field. In the short term, we might have to do some work in this playing field. Can you imagine that I had promised when I came in? I cannot imagine that the playing field was in such a state. And I got, made contacts with some friends of mine to see if I can get lights on the field. And I got someone to do an estimate for me of how much would just upgrade the surface. But the Cicero playing field, the topsoil is clay. So once it rains, it's nasty. Play on it, it's difficult. So they told me, look, for $50,000, they can, put some sand on it and level it out and help the grass grow back. I submitted a proposal to the Ministry of Youth and Sports. Eventually, I was told that, yes, it's been approved. And that's about 2.5 years ago. Up to this time, nothing has been done. I have called, and they, like I said to me in the ministry, they're just waiting for the final approval for the project to start. I said, you know what? We're going to put lights. I got a friend who committed to give me poles. I got the lights from a friend of mine, all the lights that I need. I got some friends who refurbished a generator for me, an old generator, so at least we can put the lights on a diesel generator and we don't have to pay for electricity. That was done. I next needed the wiring and the lighting, the wiring. I got an electrician to tell me what was needed. I wrote to Lucelec. Lucelec agreed to pay for all the wiring for the poles, but on one condition, the ministry must approve the project. I wrote to the ministry once, twice, 3 times to give permission so that Lucelec can agree to do the wiring. We can go ahead and put the poles and put lighting on the Cicero field. Today, they've not given approval. I've spoken to the minister, I've spoken to the chief youth and sports officer, and nothing has happened. So I have lights, I have poles. I don't know where the generator is now, and we can't put the lights. I also got through the Mormon Church, the Church of Latter-day Saints, to provide me with an outdoor gym, so we can put it on the field in one corner of the field, so the people of Cicero can actually use it and exercise whatnot. The full outdoor gym. I actually have it stored in a container right now. We need to build a concrete slab and then to bolt all the pieces of gym equipment on it. And you just can't get approval to do it. Why? Because Ernest Hilaire is the Labour Party representative for Castro South, denying the people. And like I've said to most of the young people, but like Philippe used to say, 5 years is not 50 years. There will be elections and we'll get a chance to do the right thing. And once the government changes, we will have to do something about the Cicero playing field. My dream would be for Cicero to have a proper playing field, not a little field neither side, a line east to west rather than the right north to south. I want Cicero to have a proper playing field, just like Sean Edwards built in Larry Shoes, Denry, which was
but you'll be disturbing the peace behind my house,
Yes, I'm the playing field that Sean built in Larry Shoes for the people of there now was in fact an international standard.
Yes,
international standard playing field. And Cicero needs, something. Cicero is larger than Larry Shoes, so why can't Cicero have a proper playing field? So we need to do that. Upper Cicero, which of course, thousands of young people, 1,000 people live in that area, they too need some facility. In Bassett Joseph, the young people must get a playing field. For me, that's not compromisable. And we have to have a playing facility for the young people. You cannot have a community that size and not have a single playing facility for the young people. That just doesn't make sense. And when the young people, go down the wrong path, everybody wants to blame them and criticize them. But you can even create a little sporting facility for them. Let me tell you, that for me has to happen. But we also need to focus on creating employment, big time. And for me, I have three ideas that I'm looking at. Marigo has to become a major village tourism site. Has to. You can have thousands of cruise ship passengers every year pulling up in coasters to take photos of Marigo Bay. And if you don't have a facility for the people of Marigo to at least try to fly some trade with them, try to earn a living out of the presence of those visitors.
And you have million-dollar yachts.
Precisely. Yeah. I mean, you have houses there. There's land to build villas and to create employment for people who involved in landscaping, involved in home care, taking care of homes. There's so much that can be done if you pause the first. Because everybody believes you can only employ in tourism if you have a resort. Not really. I mean, you can have villa apartments. You can have that will employ people too. I mean, you can create opportunities for indigenous, cooking. People want a local breakfast, they want a local lunch, they want a dinner, they want to chill out and drink a cold beer. Why not? And we can create those opportunities. And Marigo for me is a major, area for that. The Marigo beach is slowly receding, and it needs to be built up once again. There need to be toilets on the beach. I mean, we need to uplift and upgrade Marigo as much as possible. The Banan Bay area, there were plans under the previous Labour Party government about developing the area and expanding the cruise ship potential. And this government said that they were going to build another cruise terminal in the south. So that was kind of something that was deprioritized. Then all of a sudden we heard they were going to be doing something in Banan and they would remove all the fishermen, and they decided to remove the trailer trucks that was there and put stones, and the mayor came and masqueraded, all the things that he would be doing, and we did nothing for the last 3.5 years. This is going to be a major initiative. We have to revive the plans to develop the Banan Bay area, create opportunities again for our people to benefit from the tourism industry. And the other thing that I'm really thinking of is something I saw in London during my time living there, how they use containers and other small modules to create small businesses. So just imagine, you have almost 60 small units. You have body men, you have hairdressers, you have seamstress, you have different people in a park, in an employment park, and you can easily create 60 to 70 small businesses in a place like in Cul-de-sac, or even in Banan itself, you can create that. And for me, if government spends a couple of $1 million on developing an employment park, even if it's 60 units that they develop and 60 small businesses start developing, selling clothes, hairdressers, like I said, not carpenters, body men, mechanics, whatnot. Rather than spend 30 million on carbot, 30 million, so is it 30 or more than 30 on carbon? Just imagine we take those monies and we build a few industrial employment parks, or in different areas. What I can do, I would love to boast that as part of setting up a industrial park somewhere in Castle South that created employment for about 60 to 70, young businessmen. But I think we really need to focus on creating employment for our people. We cannot continue to have the high levels of employment, high levels of youth unemployment that we have in the country. We need to find a way. Government has to put money aside to invest in our people and the potential of our people. I can't tell you I have all the answers. I certainly have a few ideas as to what can be done. And if we can reprioritize how we spend, it frightens me though that this government is borrowing so much money that the Labour Party coming to government will have no space, to do much. But I'm very hopeful that we can create the opportunities to focus on unemployment in the constituency. So I certainly want to see Woodlands, for example, get a playing field. I mean, just think about it. I really wanted to use the George Charles Secondary School to put a ministry of Home Affairs and police, SSU, whatnot. Just what if NSDC is crying out for more training facilities. NSDC is crying out for resources to train our young people. This government has deprioritized NSDC and youth skills training. Instead, they wanted to give it to private operators, CHTTI, and other people. What if we transform George Charles Secondary School, which is an abandoned secondary school now, as a permanent headquarters for NSDC? And somebody told me, I think the government has already given it to somebody else, or is planning to give it to somebody else to do something there. But we can have a major training facility in Castries South that can train young people almost in the entire north of the island. Because the building is there. It was designed to be a classroom, to have classrooms. So it's very easy to convert it into a skills training facility and have a nice playing field nearby. The young people of Woodlands on both sides, Castries South and Castries South, can utilize it. Higher up, you have Udovic Art Studio. The Udovics are world renowned in terms of their skills and their competencies. Charlene is a young genius. If we can use them to really transform the area to give young people new possibilities, we should do so. There's a lot that I think we should do in places like Cicero. From a simple thing like just bringing back the community Wi-Fi, which used to be there during the time of Robert Louis. Just talking about creating opportunities for young people, just to have a simple thing like Wi-Fi facilities available to them. For the young people who have to do online learning and there's no Wi-Fi at their home. There's a lot we can do. We can do for them. But important for me also is not just the infrastructure. Yes, we can develop an playing field. We can put one in for a show. We can take care of the cemetery, which is a special place for me in terms of the housing and needs there and the infrastructure needs. But we have to have the programs because we need to start getting our people to think of how they too can transform their lives. It's not just government going to transform it for you. Government will give you the opportunities. Because, we have to start thinking, we cannot equalize outcomes. You have to equalize opportunities for people. So if everybody gets the same opportunity and they accept responsibility for the outcomes, then they have ownership of what happens at the end. But if you're going to make people believe that you're going to equalize outcomes for them, they're not going to accept responsibility to make it happen. Because you're already speaking a language of saying to them, I'm going to equalize the outcomes. You have to tell people I'm going to equalize the opportunities for you. So not because your name is not X, Y, and Z, you won't get a chance. Not because you have Kule, YII, you won't become a prime minister. We're going to tell people we're going to equalize opportunities for them. So everybody will have a fair chance. And those who will be displaced, marginalized, disadvantaged, we will give you the support to take you up to that level where you're on a more equal playing field. And then accept responsibility for the outcome and the success. That's when it will have meaning for individuals. So we need to start talking to our young people and saying to them, you too must step up to the plate. I will give you the opportunity. I will give you the support. I will guard it for you. I will push you. But you must play your part. And we need to start changing that language. And we need the kind of youth officers, the community development officers or social transformation officers that can speak that language and to say to them, there's a new dawn. The star has risen. Let us create a notion that we'll all be proud of. And that's the kind of Labour Party government I want to be part of. That's the kind of Castries South I want to see flourishing and blossoming. We won't save everybody. We won't make everybody happy. Everybody won't be a success, immediately. But if we can start changing the thinking and we say we're going to create opportunities for you, we're going to help you do it. At least believe in it. Make the effort. Take responsibility for your life, for your successes, and start changing the whole social and economic environment in the country.
Thank you for that, Dr. Hilaire. So we're out of time already, sadly, and we're just getting started, But any final words to the constituents of Castries South? An election is approaching. What are your final words?
Well, I think in the last 4.5 years, I have tried my best to serve the people of Castries South. I've tried to connect with them, to understand them, to learn from them, to really be part of their lives. and to say to them that I'm your representative, I'm your advocate, and whenever necessary, I will stand up for the constituents of Castres South. The journey has just started. The last 4 years has really been a process of getting to know each other, to, to understand each other. I want an opportunity to be in government so that I can do a lot more for Castres South and by extension, the people of St. Lucia. So as elections approach, I ask you to remember the service that I've offered for the last 4 years. I've been there with you. I've tried my best. I have done as much as anybody can do. And I'm sure you can see for yourself the work that I've done. I've always been there with you. There are people who disappeared for 4 years. There are those that will only come because the election is coming. And there are people that believe they can always buy constituencies like Castres South. That with money they can come to you and buy your vote and win the election and then discard you for the next 4 years. They just did it in the last election. So many of you were made to believe that if you voted for them for a simple token, that that was the end of it all. And they did not win and they discarded you. And they will come back again and they will want to offer you money again. Those of you who accept those things, receive for what it is. But also, most of you in the constituency are genuinely interested in the development of the constituency. And I believe, with me, you have an opportunity for us to build a Castres South that one can be proud of. That when we look back on the years of work on the Central Labour Party government and the stewardship of the Nestle, you will see a difference in Castres South. For me personally, it will fulfill my dream that a young person coming out of Castres South, coming out of Hospital Road, coming out of Lower Mount Road, can lead his constituency and transform it. And other young people can start thinking that they too can do the same. They too can go to university. They too can become a professional. They too can become a political leader that can transform their communities. And that is my hope and that is my dream.
Thank you for that, Dr. Hilaire. St. Lucia, the MP for Castres South, Honorable Dr. Ernest Hilaire. And thank you, St. Lucia, for joining us for this SLP Town Hall Tuesday, Castres South edition. Scotty, come over to the right side of the road. We can help you there in Castres South. And St. Lucians, just get ready to vote. I know that I am. And, it is the St. Lucia Labour Party is where the substance of governance lies. So again, thank you very much for joining us on SLP Town Hall Tuesday. I'm your host, Mondi Lewis, and that's it. Have a good night.